JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is my favorite anime manga, and after some thought, I decided that I should make a video on all 3 of my favorite pieces of media. So today I decided to do the easiest first, which is JoJo's. So today I'm going to rank every single JoJo part from best to worst, starting with Phantom Blood is the first part of JoJo's and is pretty easily the worst, but I do think it's overhated. It has a very good ending and beginning and only really fizzles out in the middle, which it gets very, very boring. But it lays the groundwork for the rest of JoJo, and it's really short, and it does everything it kind of has to do, so I don't really get the massive hate for it. But I think Dio and Jonathan are really the only 2 standouts in this part, especially Dio. Dio is amazing in this part, well, for this part's standards anyway, but the ending of this part is easily the best part of this part. I don't think this is surprising, but part 3, Stardust Crusaders, is at the number 2 spot, which is arguably the most popular part, probably tied with part 5. I don't know, I can't really decide which one is more popular. But this part introduces stands, and while I do like part 3, I pretty much have the same complaint everyone else does. It's just too long for a JoJo part. The villain of the week format was just stretched out for way too long, and most of the villains were completely boring and not interesting at all, and the part got exciting when they got to Egypt. This part though still has Dio versus Jotaro and pretty much every episode after they got to Egypt, which puts it over part 1 but not any other part. The best thing about this part is Dio's world, which is arguably the best animated JoJo arc. I don't think it is, but it's probably like top 3 if I really had the brain power to think. The side characters are good, like Polnareff, Avdol, and Joseph. The main cast in general is just really good. And Dio is obviously amazing in this part. The world is a crazy good stand, and Star Platinum and Silver Chariot. Is it Silver Chariot? I think it's Silver Chariot. But characters like Jotaro and Dio don't really get really good until later parts, which I'll get to. Part 2 is at the number 3 spot. Battle Tendency is definitely a step up from part 1 and 3. While not having stands, it uses Hamon in a much more interesting way than part 1, and it's just funner. Joseph is the second best animated JoJo and one of my favorite JoJos in general. He's really the main reason why this part is so good. The side characters are also pretty good, with like Caesar, Lisa, and Von Stroheim. Despite having the worst antagonist in JoJo, I still think Cars is good, and I really like his ultimate form a lot. Overall, a good part, just not as good as the next 5. From now on, I'm going to be talking about what I like from each part, because every part from now on I have as a 10, so there's not much criticism. Part 6 is amazing, and I think the hate that it gets is very undeserved. It has one of the better Joestars and antagonists in the series, while having an incredible side cast: Emporio, Foo Fighters, Hermes, Anasui, Weather Report, etc. And this is also the part where Jotaro officially becomes one of the better characters in JoJo. And the ending of part 6 is my favorite ending in all of media. Jolene and Jotaro's dynamic is incredible, and the recontextualization of Dio from part 3 is what really made him a good villain for me, and I love Pucci. The Heaven Plan is extremely interesting to me, and just the ending arc is one of the best in JoJo. This is the perfect part to end the original JoJo universe, and I think the reason people don't like it as much is because it's in the middle of part 5 and part 7, and most people just skim through to get to part 7, or they just don't like it because they hate women. I could talk forever about these parts, and I think the reason they're tied is because it really just depends on my mood. Sometimes I have part 6 over both of them, or I have part 5 as the best, or I have part 4. It drives me insane, but for the sake of the video, I have these 2 tied over part 6 for now. Now, let's start with part 4. For the longest, this was my favorite part before I read the manga, simply because it's just amazing. Even before Kira appeared, who I'm going to talk about for a while, it was just a fun part and solved the villain of the week problem because of its slice of life atmosphere. And the cast is great: Koichi, Jotaro, Josuke, Rohan, even Shigechi was good. I could talk for years about Rohan, but to save time, he's just one of my favorite JoJo characters, period. You can really tell Araki loves Rohan, and I think part 4 is probably his favorite part. The art style, story, pretty much everything just becomes higher quality from parts 1, 2, and 3. And even though I think Josuke is the second worst animated JoJo, I still think his dynamic with Kira is amazing. Speaking of Kira, you can ask anyone who knew me at the time while I was watching part 4. He was my favorite villain in anime manga for a while, and even though he has fallen off for me, he's still amazing. And the fact that he was my favorite villain and now he's barely top 5 villains in JoJo really tells you how good JoJo villains are. Now, I have a whole video on Kira, so I'll just use some points from there. Kira is definitely the best animated JoJo character, by far. His placement and presence in the story are just unmatched, and the way he uses his stand and his stand in general are just so good, and he's so sexy. Yeah, I don't, and his dynamic with Josuke, as I said before, is amazing. STARDUST is probably the best animated JoJo arc as well, and I could say more, but I don't want this video to be too long because I don't want to sit there editing it for 10 hours straight. On to part 5. Part 5 improves upon part 3. The Monster of the Week format is actually interesting this time, and the villains are actually really cool. By implanting a mafia atmosphere, it immerses you into the story more than any other part. This part also has the best cast in the anime by far, with Giorno, Mista, Narancia, Bacchio, and Bruno. Bruno and Giorno are my favorite animated MC and deuteragonist duo. Giorno's very existence is contradicting. Being the son of both Dio and Jonathan, it's a really weird thing, and his purpose is extremely clouded. I hate when people say Giorno has nothing to him, and people who say that, you can really tell they have trouble reading. Giorno's theme of fate is the most well-executed theme in all of animated JoJo, and while his personality doesn't jump at you like other JoJo MCs, it's there for sure, and complements his themes well, so I didn't really mind it much. Bruno is just as good, but I'm not going to talk about him because 1, I'm going to make a video on him, and 2, I don't want to edit this video. Next is Diavolo, who I think is one of the more underrated JoJo antagonists and characters in general. His true personality thing that he has going on is a cool contrast to Giorno and even Dio, even though they're not even in the same part. And the ending fight is just, it's so good. After the ending of part 6, JoJo was already my top 1, but when I finished Steel Ball Run, it just like secured its spot as top 1. It being at the number 2 spot, it might be a surprise, but I just like number 1 more. This part has the second best Joestar, the best deuteragonist, the best antagonist, and it's overall just perfect. And now you might be asking, if it's perfect, how isn't it number 1? And that's because number 1 is perfect, but better, but I'll explain when I get there. As much as I want to talk about this part, I plan on making a video on just this part, so I'll try and keep it a little brief. Instead of starting with the main cast like the other parts, I'll start with the villain of this part, Bunny Valentine. The more and more I think about him, the more perfect he gets. He's literally the perfect antagonist. I don't know how to explain it. Down to motivation, stand, mindset, beliefs, everything. It's just perfect. He's so compelling, and man, I said Kira was sexy. Look at him. He's the perfect patriot, and in some people's eyes, he's not even a villain. I mean, he did do some bad things. Overall, his goal is for harm not to come to America, which is a pretty admirable goal. Now, the main 4 from this part, the Diego, Johnny, Gyro, and Hot Pants, or Lucy, I mean, it doesn't really matter. Probably the best cast in JoJo behind number 1's cast. Johnny being one of my favorite protagonists in general, and Gyro being my favorite deuteragonist. Johnny's growth from beginning to end, and Gyro's goal of saving Marco really make you care about the story and immerse you further. The atmosphere of the race and how they act with the roadblocks and other contestants was something JoJo never really did before, and man, you can really see in this part how much Araki improved. The art, story, characters, etc. are just a step above every other part, like a big step, but are still a peg below. JoJolion is the best story I've ever read, behind Scott Pilgrim. It improves upon the Morio atmosphere from part 4 and somehow makes it better. The Rock Humans are easily, like a big gap, the best villain group in JoJo. Being menacing, but also having a unique presence that no other villain group really had in JoJo. Also, this part has the 3 best stand names in the series, Soft and Wet, Wonder of You, and King Nothing. And it also has the 2 best stands in the series overall, Soft and Wet and Wonder of You. Even the ones that aren't on that level are interesting, making part 8 stand cast easily the best in JoJo by a large margin. Paisley Park, Nut King Call, Speed King, I Am a Rock, Milagro Man, Born This Way, Killer Queen, technically, Vitamin C, and the list just goes on and on and on and on. Trust me when I say I could talk about part 8 for forever, but for the sake of editing me, cut some time for you, I'll keep it brief as I said before. The feel of part 8 is just unrivaled from any other part, and just really unrivaled from anything I've ever read. All the characters just feel like they have something to them, whether it be Rock Humans, the stand users, the Higashikata family, etc. Gappy is the best Joestar, barely edging out Johnny. His journey is my favorite in all of JoJo. Him trying to find who he is and how the mystery is slowly revealed in the story was just fantastic. All the Higashikata family are great characters. Joshu, Norusuke, and Jobin are just amazing, and there's so much to like about it. The final stretch of part 8 is just, it's crazy. I don't know how to describe it. Wonder of You is my favorite JoJo arc, and probably my favorite arc in general. And Toru, I could talk about Toru for so long, but he's easily the second best villain in JoJo. Even though his time was short, he did a lot in that time and really left the impact on me. So that's my ranking. Feel free to drop yours in the comments. I would love to see them, but I hope you enjoy and have a great day.